John teaches Sean about his brain. The podcast where I, Sean, embark on a journey to understand what's happening in my own head. Spoiler alert, I have no clue, but that's precisely why we're here. In each episode, I explore questions about the brain that I believe will resonate with all of us. Like, why can't I turn my brain off at 3 a.m.? Why my memory only works when it feels like it, and why my brain seems to betray me when I need it most. Listen, I'm not a scientist. I'm no expert. I'm just a guy looking to unravel the mysteries of my own mind. Fortunately, I happen to know a cognitive neuroscientist who is an expert in the brain, and I get to ask him all the questions I want. So, if you're curious, confused, or simply along for the ride, welcome. And hey, if you like what you hear, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to the podcast, or whatever it is you do wherever you listen to podcasts. I don't know how the algorithms work. I just know that your support keeps this journey moving forward. And together, we might just discover something remarkable. This is John teaches Sean about his brain. Let's get started. Hi, John. It's good to see you.
Hey, Sean. Good seeing you.
What is on your mind this week?
Well, there's something on my mind that's been on my mind this week and last week and a couple weeks ago, because and I think maybe I'll just mention it today. We've been updating our website at Preflex Tech, and we had a decent website, but it left a lot of things kind of out there. Like, it left a lot of questions when people would read through it. So we've totally redesigned it. We've been working on that for the last few weeks, which is why it's at front of mind, and we have it up now and operational. And I'm really excited about it because it does a couple of things. It gives information about both Preflex first, which is the law enforcement side of Preflex training, and Preflex safety, which is the industrial safety, EMI, manufacturing side of it. And so it gives information about those, but it gives just kind of a general idea of what Preflex is. And I think it's important because, as we've talked, this is a new way to think about training and safety training. It's about training the back channel, the non-conscious mind. It's the things that we do automatically that we're not aware of that we're doing. And so a lot of times when there's accidents or injuries at work, it's human error because people try to take a shortcut, for example, or people make assumptions that they shouldn't. So there's different reasons. It's almost always human error, a human factor involved in error, and it's from our non-conscious brain. Our back channels pushing those urges and impulses forward, and our on channel has to override those. And so our training is really the first system to systematically target the back channel brain so that the urges and impulses being pushed forward are more appropriate to start with. And that's a new idea, so it's difficult to grasp onto, especially if you don't already have similar information to tie it to. So there's really nothing, it's kind of the scaffolding effect. There's nothing to tie it to because there's nothing else like it out there. So anytime we say we do training, people go, oh, and then they have their schemas about what training is. And so they say, oh, so you tell people to watch it's like, no, this is totally different. So the website, I think, does a much better job than it was doing. We have one more section that we're adding to it. It's called Dive Deeper. And it has a picture of a brain, and you can click on different areas of the brain and learn more just about that one specific area. And that's going to be added into it here in the next several weeks coming up. But we didn't want to.
I'm sorry, that's going to be on the web, the main website.
On the website.
Because that's exciting for me. If I go to that website and there's going to be a picture of the brain, and if I click on a section of the brain, it will give me information about Is anatomical section or like what?
No, that's a good point. It's just because this is brain training, we're using the brain as kind of the icon image there. But
Mm-hmm.
it breaks it down into the science behind Preflex will be one chunk of the brain.
Okay.
How you apply it is another chunk. The hierarchy that we use of training is another chunk. So it just gives you a lot. So if you want, like if you don't care about that, you can just scroll right past it. But if you want to really dive deeper into what we're doing and why our methodology works, you can look at that and look at the topics. Then you can even click on specific topics and then get a lot more information will pop up. So it'll be a lot of reading and scrolling if you're interested. You don't have to do it, but I just thought that was important to get that information out to people if
Yeah.
they're interested. And we didn't want to wait until that section was completed to launch the new site. So we went ahead and launched the site, and then we'll add that in a few weeks.
Yeah. Now you said something else there. What did you say? Some hierarchy of. What did you say?
Hierarchy. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we have our preflex hierarchy. It's like
What
a,
is
a
that?
shape of a pyramid.
Okay.
And in psychology, uh, last century, in the 1900s, there's a
Mm-hmm.
psychologist by the name of Abraham Maslow. You might have heard of
Oh,
Abraham
Yeah,
Maslow.
I've heard of this
Yeah, and
Maslow's hierarchy.
Maslow's hierarchy. He called it well, it was called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And
Yes.
the
Yeah.
the whole idea is Maslow was saying, everybody's goal is to reach their full potential as a person. So in my life, I want to reach my full potential. I want to be the best version of myself that I can be. And he termed that self-actualization. That's I want to reach my pinnacle. So that's like at the very top of the pyramid. That's where I'm wanting to get. But you can't just wish yourself there and you're there. You have to set a foundation first, and then you have to build on that foundation and build to get there. So at the very base of the foundation is the need at the very base are your physiological needs, and that means I have to be safe. I have to have a roof over my head. I have to have food to eat, clothes to wear. If I have those basic needs, like for hunger, thirst, warmth, once I can't be the best version of myself if I'm wondering what meal I'm going to eat next. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
hungry. I got to figure out how to feed myself or I'm going to die type of thing. You can't be the best version of yourself. So those needs have to be met first. You can't move anywhere up that hierarchy till those needs are met. And then once you meet those needs, now that have food in my stomach, I've got to worry about my safety. Like I've got to worry about how am I going to protect myself or my things, or what about my health? I need to protect my health. If I'm sick, I need to take care of myself. Those are
Mm.
safety issues. So you have physiological, then safety, and then once you're at that point, now I can start thinking about relationships with other people, like loving and belonging and those types of things. And then when I'm kind of understanding myself and building those relationships within my community, that helps build my self-esteem, which is kind of the next step. And then once I have self-esteem of really understanding who I am and my full potential, then I can reach self-actualization. But I can't just jump there.
Hmm.
So it's a really, I mean, it's the way things work. I was going to say it's a really good way to look at things, but those are true things. You need to have your physiological needs met, and then you need to be safe and those types of things in order to be the best version of yourself. So playing off of Maslow's idea, we came up with an organizational hierarchy of needs. And so if your organization, whether it's a law enforcement agency or a company, a corporation, if you want to reach kind of your peak potential as a company, then there's a hierarchy. And similar to Maslow's. So we kind of stole this from Maslow, the idea, because it's true and it works. So our hierarchy, its foundation is safety. Like if workers at your factory don't feel safe, then they're not going to perform their best. They can't. Your company is not going to be its best version of itself. You can't find real organizational success and sustainability if your workers don't feel safe at work. So there's a foundation of safety. And then next is what we call personal power. It's where individual workers need to they need to feel they need to have the right mindset around safety and around the company and understand the company's policies and the goals and the direction the company is going. And they need to have that good understanding for themselves so that they can be a better person and worker within this system. And then the next one is social strength, which is how they all interact with each other. Employees interact with each other, how they interact with customers, suppliers, or in law enforcement, how they interact with other people on the street outside of law enforcement, how they interact with colleagues and those above them, and that type of thing. And then the next step up is the kind of the professionalism side, professional development side, where now it's you're talking about a culture of like accountability and engagement and leadership. Those are all what's important for that professionalism side of it. So if you've got the foundation of safety, which is kind of awareness and control, and I'm safe here. And then you can help your employees with their personal power, which is resilience, confidence, their own personal well-being, like officer safety or personal well-being. And then the social strength would be like respect, fairness, those type of things. Professionalism is accountability and leadership. That leads to organizational success or success and sustainability. So that's our organizational hierarchy of needs, and that's also on our website with a description of each of those that we hadn't had before, with a
Yeah.
description of each part of that hierarchy.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked a lot about how the brain works on here, but we've talked about and I've spent many years, and by that I mean over 2 decades now, training police officers, but training just in general, and it's hard to visualize, I guess, what you're talking about, because it doesn't matter if it's police work or corporate America or whatever. There are, I mean, I don't know the real number, but there are so many books written,
Yes.
about how to be a good leader in a
Mm-hmm.
corporation, how
Yep.
to get all these things, but it's all these theories, all these things are kind of like taking little pieces. This is my perspective. This is
Mm-hmm.
how I feel
Mm-hmm.
about it, but they talk about there are books out there that talk about ownership, accountability for a leader, and even good examples of it. But that's just one little piece of what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these fragments and ideas out there, but nothing like cohesive that just goes from A to Z. How to build a structure, or how to give people the tools and information and the training to achieve that top, the success at the top.
Yeah, I think the key, that is all very well said. Exactly true. Especially putting everything together, because, like you mentioned, leaders. For every person who says I'm in leadership, for every 100 people that are in leadership, there's 101 ideas of how to
Mm-hmm.
be a leader. It's just like every
Yeah.
person had, but
Yeah.
then to tie it all together from the bottom to the top is really important. But I think the key for to me, what you said was, we don't have the tools. People look for the tools to tie it all together from bottom to top, and that's what's unique, because we're doing everything that I mentioned in the hierarchy and what you were just mentioning that organizations need. All of those things are we're using those to train the back channel, the non-conscious brain, to understand those, to build schemas around all those concepts, like resilience and confidence and fairness and respect and accountability. All of those things are schemas being built through our training that helps those things come about organically and happen from just kind of your tendencies and your impulses and those types of things, which is, I think, the key to this, why it's so exciting, why we're seeing such huge effects of this in the workplace.
And then, so going back, because you just sparked something in me that I want to talk about, but I don't want to leave the website because it's on your mind this week. So
It is.
it would be disingenuous of me to ask you what's on your mind and then gloss over this. So I put a pin in it. I'm going to come back to this question that I have for you. But back to the website, you said I don't want to say the old website, but the previous website was good, but it wasn't what you were looking for. So, we have the pyramid on here on this website. You had mentioned, I'm trying to now remember.
We're going to have the dive deeper section soon.
The dive deeper section soon. Yeah. What else is on the new website that wasn't on the old one, on the previous one?
There's a better way. We describe things in a better way, easier to understand way. So there's more description, more understanding. There's more stats and things like that, and why and how it works and examples. But I think the other big thing that this website had that the other one didn't, that I know people are going to be interested in, is our pricing system. Because that's the first question. Like, wow, you're saying that all this does all the things you're talking about. That's great. But I'm waiting for the other foot to drop. Like, what does this cost us as an organization? And, it turns out that even at our most expensive end of this, it's, a cup of coffee a week, basically, for a Starbucks coffee for somebody. But to put it in real number, you can say things like that. But if an organization wants to go in and says, well, I have a manufacturing company, so you can click a tab called, that's the organization I'm looking at, and then it says, how many employees do you have? And it gives you a range of employees. You can say, well, I've got 280. So then you can select from 100 to 500, kind of, because you're in that range. Because now it'll give you a price per employee for a subscription to our training, and then it'll say, okay, now that I'm in my area, we have 3 plans, a starter plan, a pro plan, and a premier plan, and it will show you what those cost and what they include in them. And then you can say, well, you know what? Like, I'm a police agency, so I'm going to go to the organization, and how many officers do I have? And you can look at that, but then you can say, well, we have an academy as well. So there's another tab that says Training Academy. You can click on it, and how many students do you put through in a year? And then you can go through and look at that. So it breaks everything down so that people don't have to wonder. You can learn about what Preflex is. You can learn how it works and why it works. You can see what our hierarchy is and what it's built around, and why, kind of make sense of why we say that we're doing the things we're doing. It's based on that hierarchy. And then you can also get pricing. So just everything now you can see.
Yeah, because I imagine, and this is going to lead into what I wanted to ask you about, that you're introducing this to a police agency or a company or whatever it is, and you're giving them the numbers. You have years worth of research done, more so I think in law enforcement than on the safety side, but you still have these numbers, and the numbers I've seen the numbers. We've talked about the numbers. They're
staggering.
That's
they really
That's
are.
a good word. When you see the numbers, it's like, wait a second.
Those aren't true.
Come on. But when you look at the numbers, when you look at the research and the results, it's like, this is amazing. And then, to your point, how much does it cost? And so I like what you're saying is what I want to make sure I understand. On the website, the updated version, I don't want to say it's live, but like, I can go to the website under pricing, and I can kind of hover over one of them, or is there a slider? I can select how many employees I have, how many officers.
Yep.
And so I, like, in real time, I can kind of get at least a snapshot of what it's going to cost my agency or my company for this training.
It'll give you a ballpark. I mean, you'll get the ballpark number, but then there's also a little button below it that says request quote, and it just goes in, and then it asks you to put in your email address. And really, that's it. It doesn't ask a lot of it. You've already told us the size of your company, and I think it does ask you how many, because we give a range, like from under 100, and then from like 100 to 500, and then 500 to 1,000, and so those are ranges. But if you want a price quote, it says how many employees do you have, or how many officers do you have, and so there you can say like 263. Like you can get very specific.
Mm.
Then say request I mean, that's on the request a quote, and then you submit it, and then you get back within a day or so a quote that says for 263 police officers, this is exactly what it's going to cost your agency. And you know, the starter plan is about 3 months. The pro plan is a year, and then the premier plan is multi-year. So you're selecting one of those. So if you select the pro plan, then we say it's this much for 1 year. Here's what your subscription would cost, and then you have the quote in hand, you know, specifically, and you don't have to waste a lot of time on, you know, getting on a call, you know, where there's
You're getting to what
stuff.
I was.
I just want to know what it's going to cost my organization. There's also one that has a little phone by it, that if you want to schedule a call to talk to us to learn more about, like, I have more questions. I think I'm sounding really salesy right now. You know me. I think the listeners know me by now, that when I'm terrible at sales, I love giving information. So if you schedule a call, it's about, here's the information, here's what this does. And I just want people, if people understood how powerful this new methodology is, and how well it trains, how safety numbers change so dramatically, nobody has to sell it. If they just understand that, then it's like, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, a couple of things. First off, you already hit on it, but to my ears, what you're describing, it suits me to a T, because I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to get the information, and then I want to get a quote. I don't want to talk to a salesperson. I don't want to be. So I love that part. And then secondarily, and I hope you take this in the spirit in which it's intended, you're not a good salesperson. You're a researcher. You want to talk about the research because you're proud of it, because of what you've been able to accomplish through science, right? Like, you had a theory, you tried to disprove that theory, and it didn't work. And so that actually, then what's left is, this is something that is real. This works.
Yes.
And the problem, the third thing that I'll say, is in my experience, it's harder. I don't even know if it's harder. It's really difficult, if not impossible, to measure safety in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. How do you measure prevention, right?
Yeah.
But they do have metrics on the safety side, manufacturing, construction. And I know that because even if I go to the dump, the refuse station here, there is a giant sign that says this many days since an injury. So obviously, I mean, maybe not obviously, to my mind, there's some way to measure safety, like whether it's by injuries, by medically treated injuries. I don't really know, but I feel like there's a way to measure that. Yeah, and we don't have that in law enforcement.
No, so in law enforcement, our research was more around setting up scenarios and situations, and using the experimental method to have a control group and the experimental group, and then you're looking for changes in behaviors and actions and in responses to things. And we've done multiple studies like that, and I mean, you can get a little bit of an idea, like if citizen complaints go down or something, but it's hard to know. Like you said, you can't measure. If an officer doesn't use force one time, you don't know why. So it's just hard to know what they normally would have done, because every situation is dynamic. Like in a manufacturing place, you have this one machine that punches holes in metal, and somebody gets their hand caught in it, and there's an injury. And so you can measure that because it's the same machine punching the same holes over and over. So you kind of have an idea how many times it's happened, and if it stops happening, what that is. But when you have personal interactions that are different every time, there's not a real good baseline to know what to expect each time, because it's an interaction between two people, so that gets really difficult. But in the manufacturing world, yeah, they keep track of their own numbers, like you said, how many days since, and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
keep very close tabs on all of that because it hits their bottom line directly.
So, can I go into not a new topic, but something you said, or is there anything else that's on your
I
mind this week?
I've got that off my mind, I think. So I would
Okay.
just say it's preflextech.com is the
Yeah. If
website.
you
So check it out.
check it out and then give some feedback, on our socials or whatever, if you want to hit up John and tell him how great his website looks,
Yeah.
because it sounds amazing. I can't wait to see that new feature that's forthcoming. I'm
Yeah.
excited about that for me.
Yeah, so maybe I'll mention that again when it does
Yeah, when it
come
drops,
out.
we'll talk about it on the podcast because I want to see it.
Yeah, it probably sounds weird to be excited about a website coming out, but when you put a lot of time and effort into it, that's what's been on my mind.
I mean, I don't know that this might be hyperbolic, but this is your life's work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You spent a large portion of your life learning about the brain and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were able to take that information and turn it into this thing that now it's on your mind all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think that's weird to get excited about a website that does a great job of highlighting what you got going on right now.
Good.
But it does lead me to it's hard to condense this into 1 hour. But the idea of training and learning and all those. So in the corporate world, right, you go to a training, and I'm speaking in very general terms. I'm not saying every corporation does this, but I think a lot of them, you go to a training, we all gather into a conference room, and someone says, here's the new policy, or here's the new TPS report and how to do it, or whatever. And that counts as training. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but what if I work in a warehouse and I have to go to an annual research on how to run a forklift, and that's training?
That's training. Mm-hmm.
We call those two things training.
Yeah. So,
but go ahead.
So I think I get where you're going. So you're differentiating maybe between gaining knowledge, like sitting in a room and being told what new policies are, because that's knowledge that I'm gaining and that I have to know. And then when I'm recertifying on my forklift, that's more of a skill that I'm having to show that I can perform this skill at this level to run the forklift. So those sound like two different things, which they are. One's gaining knowledge and one's learning a skill, but they're both called training. Is that what
I get that. Yeah. Boy, you just put that way more succinctly than I did, which is your role on this podcast. But yeah, so, I mean, again, I think the royal we, but we use those words. We just kind of use the same terminology and words to cover different things. And we all kind of accept that, and I like what you just did. That was helpful for me to differentiate between knowledge and skill.
Mm-hmm.
Because you do need, even in skill training, there needs to be some knowledge about, whether we're teaching a technique or a concept, whatever it is. You have to know what that thing is. And then if you're talking law enforcement, there's a use of force aspect. You have to have knowledge about when you can do things and when you can't. But you don't necessarily need skill to learn the knowledge piece. Is that fair to say? If I'm sitting in a classroom and someone's telling me information, is there skill involved in that?
So, I mean, just to get really technical and split
Go
hairs.
ahead. I asked for it.
There is a skill to learning.
Okay.
So to, gaining knowledge is a skill that you can develop so that you can become a better learner. So that would be a skill, I guess. But if you're talking about, does there have to be a movement skill, like around, learning to drive a forklift is a skill? Does there have to be that with knowledge? And there doesn't have to be that type of skill. No.
Okay. But now I've kind of I've opened Pandora's box here, but you said there's a skill to to learning, to taking in
Mm-hmm.
knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, are there could, I'm imagining probably more than one skill.
Yeah, there are multiple, and I think that
Okay.
that maybe another way to divide this, if we're going to talk about how to build skills around learning, then another way to break this down, it kind of follows the knowledge and the skills part a little bit, but to
Okay.
look at on-channel training or on-channel learning and
Mm-hmm.
back-channel training, back-channel learning. So
Oh,
to remind
okay.
listeners again that the on-channel, when we talk about on-channel anything, it's about your conscious awareness of what's happening to you at this moment in time. You're aware of where you are and what's happening around you. Your place in space and time. And back channel is the non-conscious part of the brain where it's doing the things that the brain does to keep you alive and functioning that are outside of your awareness. So that's
Mm-hmm.
on channel versus back channel. What you're aware of and what you're not aware of that your brain's doing. So
And
that
if I can add just really quickly, the on channel is very limited in capacity,
yes.
and the back channel is I mean, you and I were having a conversation yesterday offline about this, and I made the statement. I was afraid I was going to get slapped for it, but I think I was right. Is the brain is the fastest computer that we're aware of right now.
Yeah, yes. That's
I mean,
true. And
it can process more information than I mean, let's just say, so that I don't get in trouble for misstating the power of the brain. The back channel can process a lot of information really quickly. There's a lot.
yeah, yeah. So I believe that it's still faster than the fastest computer. I know that
Okay, good.
there's been some things that have come out like just like 5 years ago. They said, well, computers have finally passed humans in processing speed because Blue or whatever the name of the computer was beat the world champion chess player in a game that had never been done. Humans could always beat computers in chess, so it looks like computers might be surpassing us. And then if you look at like the things AI can just come up with so much stuff so quickly, you just type stuff in, or even search engines. And to me, that still's not the same, because the chess player like Blue doesn't have to kind of push away intruding thoughts about I need to go to the bathroom or I'm hungry, or if I make a stupid move, it's going to be on YouTube or so, or I'm going to be a meme or what, all those other things that your
Right.
brain's trying to
Or
protect
you
you from all
hear
of that
people in the gallery chattering or saying something
that
or
distracts
gasping or
you.
whatever. And then also, if I may, Blue doesn't have to breathe, pump
Hmm.
blood. What I mean, what else does your non or your back
Oh,
channels
just
doing?
everything. Hold your balance
Keeping
so you
you
don't
alive.
tip over and yeah.
Oh
Blue
yeah.
is just sat down
So,
and plugged into a wall,
yeah, yeah,
and then
yeah, yeah.
everything's taken care of.
Back to the, I didn't want to go too deep into that, but what you're saying is like the non-conscious versus the conscious brain. Your on channel it can only process so much at a time. It's pretty limited.
Very so, the magic number 7 plus or minus 2, like the types of things you can hold in your short-term memory and your working memory to consider. There's,
Hmm.
5 to 9 things. It's usually, a lot of people say 4 to 7 things, but it's, yeah, magic number 7 plus or
Yeah.
minus 2, so it's
So
very limited.
let's go back then to let's stick to learning, like
Okay.
taking in information and then being able to somehow use that information down the road.
Yeah, so a lot of the original
Knowledge.
research and learning around learning was for knowledge, so on channel learning. And in
Hmm.
fact, in courses that I've taught in college and universities, they're usually called learning and memory. Those two are kind of tied together, because if you're if you learn something, how do you know you've learned it unless you're tested on it, or unless you use it in some way? So there has to be a
Okay.
memory of it. So really about learning, it's, you can think of it kind of being broken down into the memory parts, but broken down into encoding. Like you take in information and you encode it. So attention is the prerequisite. if you're not paying, so if your on channel is turned off, then you're not learning right now in the traditional sense when we're talking about gaining knowledge,
So
because you
let
have
me
to pay
ask
attention to it.
yeah. So
Yeah.
if I decide I have a test, oh, I don't want to set up the parameters because I'm gonna there's too much in there. But let's just say I want to study, and I
Mhm.
go to Starbucks at 8 o'clock in the morning to study.
Yeah.
And you're saying I'm bringing that up because attention
Yeah.
is.
There's so much going on around you.
Mhm.
You have to, if you have it. So are you thinking of like a textbook that you're reading, or your
Yep.
notes that you're, okay. So I'm going over my notes,
Oh,
my
how
textbook.
about my notes? Yeah,
Okay.
because I wrote down the things I thought was important that a
Okay.
professor said to me. I go to Starbucks with my notes and I'm going to
Yep.
study.
Yeah. And just walking in and smelling that coffee just focuses you like, man, I'm feeling good right now. I'm awake. I'm fresh. Got a cup of coffee. I can smell it. And then you pull your notes out. You start to look over them, but there's chattering and people are talking. And if you get caught up in kind of what's going on around you, then you're not paying attention to your notes. You're not going to learn what's in your notebook because you have to pay attention to it first. Just because you're looking at something, that information from the notebook, as light reflects off of this, because
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about it a little bit when we had an episode on attention, but as light reflects off of that notebook, your eyes capture that information. Some of that goes to your back channel, but the majority of it goes to on channel. But if you're not focused on that, if you're listening to other things, it's like your eyes are attentionally, your eyes are turned off, and you're not going to learn any of that. You have to pay attention to it. That's first and foremost. And that leads to encoding. So the encoding part is I'm paying attention to this because now I'm shutting everything out. And if you want to know kind of how difficult it can be, you can be struggling to focus on your notes because there's chatter, and all of a sudden you kind of blocking that out, and you're just starting to focus, and you pushed all those sounds out, and you hear somebody say Sean, da da da, and it might not even be about you, but you immediately, like, that grabs your attention, and you look up like, did somebody just say Sean? And so now your focus is gone again. And so it can be really tenuous on getting that. But then encoding is taking that information in and then storing it. It's converting it to be stored. That's what
Okay.
encoding is.
So let's take it out of the Starbucks. Because
Okay.
by the way, I'm reading my notes and every drink order I hear, I'm like, who ordered that? What are you putting in your drink? Anyway, so let's take it out of the Starbucks. Okay. So
Okay.
I'm in my dorm room
Yes.
alone, door closed, TV off, like nothing. Ooh, okay. Last thing about attention. What about if I turn music on?
That's up to you. That's up to individual differences. Some people, when they turn music on, it's like it fills the void and it becomes background noise and helps them focus.
Okay.
And they
Okay,
can
good.
study better with music. And then there's some
Okay.
people like me, if there's just a sound, or I hate the way my brain works attention wise when it comes to studying. I love it in
Oh,
other ways, but just the studying part, because I need it to be really quiet so that I can think through and think over something. Because I'm slow that way. I'm thick skulled. And so it takes me several times to get something in my skull, and it needs to be quiet while I do that. But some
okay.
people, if it's quiet, they struggle because then any little sound distracts them. But if they've got music going, it kind of blocks things out, and then they can study. So that's really an individual preference. It's what
Okay,
your
so
brain prefers.
I'm in my dorm room, not in
Mm-hmm.
Starbucks. The door's closed. It's all
Mm-hmm.
quiet. I have some classic or some jazz. I like so
Hmm.
jazz low kind of playing in the background. So we've taken care of the attention part. I have
Mm-hmm.
my notes, and now I'm able to pay attention to that information that's coming in through my eyeballs.
Yes.
Now, because I'm very confused about what you mean by encoding.
Okay. So that's kind of a biological term of what's happening in the brain. It's a process. And
Okay.
so research has shown that when we encode information, it's not just a process. You just encode it and you're done. There's different levels of encoding, and they're referred to as shallow and deep. So if you're trying to learn 10 words and their meanings, like meanings behind words, for example,
Okay.
shallow way to encode it is just to read the word and its meaning, and then read the next word and its meaning, and go through all 10, and then do that again like 5 times. So you've read each word and their meaning 5 times. So that helps get that information to where you can encode it and remember it later. It helps. It's better than reading it once and stopping. But that's really a shallow way to encode information. A better way is to take each word, read the word and its meaning, and then try to figure out how to put it in a sentence that's meaningful to you. So, like if the word is ecstatic, you would say, I was ecstatic when I got that job offer. I didn't think I had a chance, and I got the job offer. So now you're thinking about the word and how it applies to you. And now I got a job offer out of this. That's kind of an emotional tie to it. Now that word, you've just processed that much deeper than just reading the word and the definition. Now you're tying emotions to it, context to it.
That was going to be my
You're
question.
making it,
Okay.
yeah.
If you tie an emotion to it, that's a stronger connection.
Yes. And so
Okay.
that's deep processing or deep encoding. So
Right.
that's really the difference. It's just how you, like a strategy that you use to make it. And so that's when we're talking about learning can be a skill. That's a skill you can learn to really quickly know how to encode deeply and put meaning behind stuff to help you remember it better, to know it better, to understand it, and to remember it better. So
Right.
that's the
Yeah.
encoding side.
Okay. So I have to pay attention,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can improve my ability, a skill to encode the information.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Then next is consolidation. So now that I've encoded that information, I have that information in my brain in a way that it's processed it deeply. Now I have to consolidate it so that it sticks around for a while. And that, like, one of the keys to consolidation is a good night's sleep, because you can study and put the words into sentences that are meaningful to you. I was ecstatic when I got that job offer. And then you don't sleep that night, you stay up all night studying other things, or you go out with friends or whatever, and you don't really get sleep, and you're going through the next day, and you're just, what your brain is doing, it doesn't say, there's not a switch you can turn on and off to say, I want you to encode now, and then you start reading those words, and then you turn it back off. So it just has that one little thing that you can hold on to. It's like everything you're doing is trying to encode. As you walk out your dorm room down the hall, your brain's trying to encode that information too, and it's so that you can remember it later. So your brain is in a constant state of trying to encode information. If you don't give your brain a break and sleep for a little bit, then you've got, now instead of 10,000 things to encode, to consolidate, you've got 20,000 things or 30,000 things to consolidate, and your brain's not going to do a very good job of that. So sleep cycles are really important, and consolidation is just taking that information you've encoded and firming it up. And
yeah.
so if you try to remember something without a good night's sleep, you're not going to remember it as well as if you have a good night's sleep.
And so, okay, so I'm paying attention to it. I'm in my dorm, jazz. I've encoded it. I've attached emotion to it or made it important, and then I have a good night's sleep, at least one sleep cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and then
the next step would be just retrieving that information or recalling it.
that would be
So
the
like
test.
now you're on the test, you're having a quiz or the
Okay.
test, and you've got to answer it. And so another skill I used to tell students all the time, study, try to encode that information, and also encode it and have a good night's sleep to consolidate it. But then is like another step of your studying is get with another person, another student in the class, and try to teach them the concept that you learned about yesterday.
You've mentioned that before. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. So, I'm going now to Sean mode, because here's what Sean would do. I have a test at 11 o'clock today. So I go to Starbucks at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I look at my notes and I read each one of the words. Right. What was the shallow encoding? I read each one of the words 10 times. I stare at it over and over and over again, and then I get up and I go and I take the test.
Yeah.
And when I do that, um, I take the test, I might be successful on the test, right?
Mm-hmm.
I might get a decent score, which doesn't apply to Sean. But let's just say in this scenario, I get a decent score on the test. What I'm getting, or my belief is that I am not going to retain that information in the long term.
You're right, and that gets to the idea of mass versus distributed studying and practice. So
Okay.
mass means you cram it all at once. Distributed means there's spaced repetition over time. So if you have 7 days to study for something,
Mm-hmm.
and you spend 10 minutes a day for 7 days, you put in 70 minutes worth of studying. If you instead the night before, and then you go the next day to take your exam, if instead the night before you just study for 70 straight minutes, so it's still, both of those are 70 minutes.
70 minutes.
You
Yep.
go in, this is where it gets a little bit surprising to some people. Research has shown if you do those 10 minutes a night for 7 nights and take the test versus 70 minutes the night before the test and then you take the test, the results are basically the same. You're going to score
Mm-hmm.
about the same on that test, which most people think, well, then why not just always cram? And that's because once that test is over, those people who crammed, within a day, basically, almost all of that information's gone. And so they cram for it and were able to hold it for that 24-hour period, and then it's washed out. And within that 24-hour period, you took your exam. So
Mm-hmm.
then that leads to kind of a false sense of, yeah, I'm learning this stuff. But then if you have a comprehensive final at the end where it builds on all the stuff you've learned throughout the semester and all the tests you've already taken, you basically have to start over at that point, relearning everything. But if you spaced the studying out, you remember that so much better for that semester, and it's easy to restudy that, to rehearse it and remember it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking about retention tests, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you and I cram in the Starbucks for
Mm-hmm.
70 minutes. You distributed it out 10 minutes a day, or 7 minutes a day, 10 times, whatever it is. And you and I both get an 89% on the test.
Mm-hmm.
I think the key for me is in a month, you and I take the exact same test. I know your point. The structure is you take a final or a midterm or whatever. I got it. But I want to say you and I take the exact same test.
Yeah.
And you are going to score much higher on that than I am.
Yeah, and it's not, what did we both get, an 83?
89.
89.
I gave us both a what
I'll
is that,
take
an A
that.
minus? I've never gotten an 89. I don't know what that is. But
You are so full of it. Okay, so yeah, I'll take the 89 as well. And so a month later, I might score an 81 or a 78 or something like that. So there's a little bit of a dip because I stopped studying, but I learned it because of distributed practice. But you might get like a 28% because there literally is this huge drop just after 24 hours that continues for like 2 or 3 days, and it almost bottoms out. And the person that spaces out practice, it's a gradual decline, and it might take several months to get down to where you can't remember as much. So yeah, there's a huge difference. But there's a lot of current research on this very thing, and it's used a lot in corporate America, and it's called micro learning. Where they'll take information and break it down. So they want people to learn, whatever it is they're wanting to learn, whether it's policies or whether it's information about, like, they might be teaching them about like emotional intelligence or something like that. If you take that information and break it down into short, to small chunks that are like 7 to 10 minutes each, 7 to 12 minutes, and then people can just sit at their desk or at their work area and they consume that, and they do a couple of those a week. That starts to build information each time they take that lesson, whether it's watching a video and taking the quiz or whatever. That micro learning session starts building a scaffold system to where by the time they're done, they now have, let's say, 2 hours worth of information over 6 months that they know that so well by now, versus sitting in a conference room for 2 hours and going over 73 PowerPoint slides.
Yeah.
It's like people walk out of that and go, yeah, forget it. And I read a interesting article, actually about a week ago, or less than a week ago, maybe. But it was about this idea of micro training and how effective it is. And they made the point, which I loved because this is a point I'm always making. They said they're working with the brain, and they even italicized with, like I always do. It said, micro learning is working with the brain. This isn't, micro learning is new, but the fact that this is how the brain learns is not new. It's always been this way.
Yeah.
The gathering people into a room for 2 hours has never been that effective. But now social media is changing this to the point that people in corporate America, they're so used to watching 1 or 2 minute videos or reading short pieces of information and moving on because of social media. They're now demanding micro learning. It's like, I don't want to see 71 PowerPoint slides anymore. Like, I don't want to go to this meeting. Where before you would go because you felt like you had to, and this is the way you learn. People are going, this isn't the way you learn. And so now that we're getting a more informed workforce, it's kind of forcing micro learning.
Yeah, I go back to, again, law enforcement and the traditional way, and I think it's probably this way in corporate America too, is that we have an expert. In some cases, it's a cop who's been a cop for 10 or 15 years and they're a really good cop. In the corporate field, it might be you pay someone, some contractor to come in who's an expert in their field, and then they go through a 70 point or 70 slide PowerPoint presentation. So they're really good instructors. They're charismatic. They're experts in their field. And then they go through these PowerPoints, and it's like, we trained our people. We have the best training available. And I'd say that about law enforcement too, right? Is like they bring in experts in the field. You brought up emotional intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Officer wellness. There's all these experts out there, and really good instructors, and they come in and just for 2 or 4 or 8 hours, just give a presentation.
And a lot of times they sit down and think about, how am I going to get this information across to other people, because they are successful at what they do. And it might be their personality, because they're dynamic and they get people to listen and follow. So they think, how am I going to do this? So I'm going to just put these key facts, because this is how I do it. Not realizing that, well, that's how you do it because that's what works best for your brain. But now you're talking to 50 brains in the room. So it'd be better to know what's best for 50 brains, not what's best for another brain just like mine, but what's best for 50 brains.
But I want to say, because I didn't mean to cut you off, but I feel like there's some times that I run my mouth and then I realize what I just said. I want to acknowledge, I've never run a corporation. I've never run a police agency. It is difficult to get everybody together in a room. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is if I'm understanding you correctly, 10 minutes a day, 3 days a week for 2 months, or what, I don't know the actual math. Let's say it's an 8-hour emotional intelligence class, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Take that 8 hours and spread it out into these micro trainings. If I am fully acknowledging that, because I was poo-pooing the traditional training, how difficult it might be to get 50 people to do in the sense of 10 minutes a day, 3 days a week for however many months. Mm-hmm. I acknowledge that on its face does seem more difficult to do than just, clear everybody for an 8-hour day and cram them in a room and do a PowerPoint.
Yeah, that might be the easier way to do it, but it's not as effective. And
exactly. Yes.
So micro learning is a term used for on-channel information. If you're wanting to train people, I'll use that word again. If you want to train them to hold a training where it's about knowledge,
is it skill training?
This would be knowledge. So on-channel knowledge training, that's kind of the micro learning part. At Preflex, we're using micro learning, so we're giving information for the on-channel, but our real secret and key to this is training the back channel, the non-conscious brain. And those are also in these short micro learning. And so we refer to those as micro training versus micro learning. So we call all of ours micro training because we combine the two. So while you're getting information for your on-channel knowledge, we've also embedded in that the themes and the topics and the things we want the back channel to learn. And it learns in a different way through repetition and through some other things like that. So we're embedding that into the lesson. And then there's also just straight exercises that are just for the back channel. So that's just straight micro training that are just 2 minutes long or 3 minutes long.
Okay.
And then these others are a little bit longer,
sense.
like 5 minutes, because it includes on-channel information. But yeah, that's showing, again, you're right that now you have to make sure people are doing that. But with micro learning and micro training, it's almost always delivered digitally. So like over your phone or your laptop or your desktop or whatever, or tablet. So if you're delivering something digitally, then you can track it. And now you can set up, you can group people into teams and have a supervisor, and then you can give them a dashboard on their device when they log in that can immediately show them who's doing the training and who isn't. So you can say, hey, you're falling behind in the training, pick it up a little bit. So there's some accountability to it that way as well. Because if you set up an 8-hour session in one room, somebody's going to be sick that day, or somebody's going to leave partway through because they just got a call because their kid got hurt at school, or what, there's people leave. And they also, while they're sitting there, even if they're looking at PowerPoint slide number 64, they're thinking about this weekend when their kid's playing t-ball or whatever. Their mind can be somewhere else. So yeah, there's just so many benefits. Plus you're paying somebody to fill in for them or overtime or whatever. If they're just taking 10 minutes a day, that's easier to cover.
Yeah. And you don't have to have the instructor come in 3 days a week and do 10 minutes a day.
No.
Like you said, if you can do it digitally, that's, yep. But, I take some comfort in what you said is it sounds like corporations, people are starting to move this direction, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, they are. Yeah. A lot of corporations are doing this. Yeah. And again, I think it's a lot because their workforce is demanding it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go sit in this. Yeah.
This I know, but I feel like, listen, I'm always bringing the negativity, but it's like, if you're telling me that the workforce is demanding that it's being done right, but only because of shorter attention spans, because they're on their phones more, I guess maybe if it's being done right, I can just let go of the reason behind it. But it's still like, it's really hard. It seems like this whole topic, why I'm really interested in what you're saying is because we as a people seem to be entrenched in doing it the way we've always done it. There's a comfort level there. I don't know what it is, but this idea of no, you don't have to do it this way. There's an easier way that actually works better. Than again cramming a whole bunch of people into. I don't think this is too outside. When I first started in law enforcement, we had a week where, as a squad of officers, we got unplugged from the field. We didn't do street work. We trained for 4 days, and part of that training was we had Dr. Kilmartin.
Yep.
So he came in and talked about emotional survival for officers.
Is it Kevin Gilmartin?
Kevin Gilmartin.
Yeah.
Gilmartin. And then also, I'm forgetting his name, but I can see his face. There's another instructor. It'll come to me. But anyway, we would do 4 hours with one of these guys and then 4 hours with the other. And we sat in an auditorium, and there was 100 of us, 100 cops in an auditorium, listening to a super charismatic, dynamic instructor talk for 4 hours. And then the next day, I almost had his name. And the next day we did 4 hours with him. Right. And that 4 hours of that information, I couldn't tell you. I could tell you one thing Gil Martin said, and I can't repeat it on this podcast, but I remember one thing, right? And to your point is like, could that information today be in an app or in a some kind of digital format that I get these little 10-minute blurbs every day, and I'm going to, and I got sleep cycles, I'm paying attention to it. It's everything you just said. And that actually can build my emotional well-being or, officer well-being so much better than once a year for that 4 hours. It's frustrating, as I sit here and listen to you talk. And I think about how many corporations, how many people out of our 19 listeners right now, but work at a corporation or work at some location where there's still this antiquated idea of what training is, how to transfer knowledge, from one person to a group of people. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. It's just
And
I'm frustrated because it's
from
like,
a setting to practical use.
what do you what do you what do
Well,
you mean by that?
transferring knowledge from what you're learning in the classroom to a real live actual event. So now you have to apply it. That's another hard step.
Oh, so can you a little bit more about that? Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah. So, well, probably not in law enforcement,
No,
but
no, no. A corporate
yeah. So, well, just
setting.
like you sit in class, you've been in math class and you've learned all these different math formulas and you can pass a test. And then you go to a restaurant and it's not your normal scheme of a fast food restaurant. It's actually a sit down restaurant and they bring you the bill at the end and you've got to add the tip. And
Ooh,
now you're
yeah.
going,
Oh,
I don't know how to, and you miscalculate, and it's like you're doing so well in math class. So there's a transfer of knowledge to take what you're learning and apply it to real life, and that can be in corporate settings too. You learn this stuff and you go, okay, I got that, and you can pass a little quiz, but now you're back in your work area, and none of it you can't apply it directly because they didn't do that for you. And maybe they applied it like, if you're in one of these three instances, here's how you would apply this. And you go, okay, but then instance 4 comes up and instant 5 comes up and now you're not sure. So now you have to try to tell them, here's how you apply it in these 100 different ways or these 200 different ways. That's impossible. You can't do that. So a lot of times micro learning and micro training is about, it focuses on the concepts that are important. And then as you do some exercises as part of that micro training, it's having you apply a concept. And now you can more broadly transfer that to a wide variety of things happening in your work area.
interesting. So I can learn something in a classroom setting, and I'm saying learn it,
Mm-hmm.
and I can learn it well. But if I don't understand it,
Mm-hmm.
then it's
Well,
difficult. Go ahead.
yeah, you might understand it as it's applied to the
In a
example in the
specific
classroom. Mm-hmm.
context.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then if I have to try to apply it in a different setting, that's where it becomes difficult.
Yeah, so let me give you an example. And this is from a manufacturing company. And so Preflex gives really concepts, 7 of them, and really more like 5 of a certain type of concept. But it's around the code words in manufacturing is breathe, scan, hazard, position, protect, engage, and escape. And so they're thinking about those concepts over and over, and then the Preflex exercises to train the non-conscious brain, the back channel, has them through Flex Talk, which is our version of self-talk. They talk themselves through tasks and through events based on those concepts. So they're constantly using those concepts in their work environment. And then that teaches them broadly or generally how to apply a concept. So it's not learning about having a 2-hour class about this is how you should position yourself. And if this comes up, here's how you would escape. It's just, I'm starting to use this in everything I'm talking about. So now the brain starts to apply that. And we had a welder say, just in conversations about how he was using this, he said, yeah, I was sitting there one day at my work site. I just stepped aside for a second. I was getting ready to start in again. And I was doing one of my Preflex exercises and just thinking through those different code words, those 7 concepts. And he said, I was thinking about hazard, what in my work zone, in my work area is a hazard. And I looked over and my trash can was full, kind of to the top. And I thought, as I'm lighting my torch to weld and a spark flew in that, that's a hazard because that could start a fire. So I'll just empty my trash really quick. And that's not something we told them to do, but now they're starting to apply concepts into everything we're doing. And by the way, the head HSE person for this organization that traveled around to their 8 different manufacturing sites around the US and Mexico told me, he said, I can tell when I walk in to one of our facilities whether they have Preflex or not because of housekeeping. And I was like, what's housekeeping? Because they use so many different terms that mean so many different things. And I thought this is probably some fancy word for this major concept. And he's like, if the area is clean or not, like if it's picked up or if it's dirty. I was like, oh, housekeeping. Yeah, that makes sense. But he said, I could tell by looking, just by walking in, because the facilities that have Preflex, they're like clean. There's no trash. There's no stuff stacked weird. Everything's in order. Everything's clean. And that's not what Preflex tells people to do. But if you start applying the concepts to a hazard, I could trip over that if it's sticking out in the walkway. Let me just move it to the side. That's stacked too tall and leaning. That could fall. Let me restack this. My trash can's full. Let me empty that because that could spark, a spark could set a fire. That's what I mean by transfer of knowledge. And if, with micro training and micro learning, you have opportunities to build those concepts rather than just sit in a room and tell them about the concepts and then tell them to go use them. Wow. And I just want to go back to your pet peeve about social media driving the workforce is now demanding a new type of training because when I first started lecturing as a professor, there was not social media yet. But there was television. And so we had people coming in at different faculty meetings and different trainings I would have. And they would say, you have to realize students have grown up on TV and cartoons and TV shows and sitcoms. They're used to about every 7 to 10 minutes, there's a commercial break. And their mind stops processing. And then for a couple minutes, they come back and then they focus again and then they stop processing. So in an hour's lecture, you should have 3 or 4 breaks of, even if you don't have a break where they go do something, because that's excessive, you can have a break in your teaching style. You can be lecturing and then you can stop and say, I'll tell you what, for the next 2 minutes or 3 minutes, turn to the person next to you and talk to them about da-da-da. And then you can say, okay, and then you start your lecturing again. And maybe it's because I just came out of so many years of having to sit and listen to sometimes 3-hour lectures and 2-hour lectures where I was trying to stay awake and I'm trying to take notes and somebody's in a monotone, rah, 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 just reading away, that it kind of frustrated me. I got a little bit upset about it. And I'm like, they can sit and listen for 50 minutes. I mean, come on, they're 18, 19, 20. So I fought it and thought, I'm not going to do that. And it didn't take long till I was thinking, what am I doing? This is like me frustrated that I didn't get something, a fun break when I was learning. So I thought if people's brains work that way, then that's the way I'm going to start teaching. And now it's even worse. It's like every 3 to 5 minutes. And, they would say, be demonstrative or, engage them that way. And it was like, I'm not a performer, but I kind of understand that the reason social media is so effective is because it tapped into how our brain works the best. So I agree with you. It's frustrating. But on the other hand, if that's how the brain works, social media figured it out. Our training could also figure it out and start having these micro learnings and micro trainings to take advantage of that and use what social media taught us, maybe. As much as I hate to say that.
No, you do this to me all the time. You did it again. Putting a positive spin on something. I know that there are algorithms that run social media, and the algorithms figured out how to manipulate human beings based on how their brain works.
That's a good term, manipulate human beings. Yeah.
That's my belief about social media, but neither here nor there. I mean, I'm about to plug our social media here in 2 minutes, but again, the algorithm was smart enough to figure out how the brain works in a human being.
Yep.
and it's right. And so why not accept that now people expect a different kind of training based on what social media is giving them, based on an algorithm by AI? I'm good
Yeah.
with it now. The
Okay.
other thing is, my only pet peeve in life is that I have pet peeves.
Yeah.
So I don't want to have those.
Well, just one last thing I'll say about that. It's also frustrating to me because that's two different ways to get to the right answer. Algorithms is one way where you just a ton of people get online and start interacting, and then you can just tweak and change interactions a little bit till you find the sweet spot, and you can go there, and that can be done in a matter of weeks or whatever. The other
Mm-hmm.
ways to figure that out is to set up this program of study, of research, where you have research lined up, and you find out one thing and you use that for your next project to find this out, and it can take a decade or longer, which is what I did.
What you did,
And that's
yes.
so much hard work and so much effort and thought, and just my brain being so tired and trying to still figure things out. And you finally get to the point that, hey, these micro trainings or work, or you can let social media in just a matter of hours or days go, yeah, this works. And that's frustrating, but that's two ways to approach it. One's a
Yes.
scientific way, and one's a kind of a what am I trying to say? Like a field study type thing where you just
So
see
it's,
what's actually happening.
I mean, it's kind of a survey that you don't know you're involved in.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? Every like, every follow,
Hmm.
every thing, it is being gathered. All that information is being gathered and put through a filter to go, here's what we're going to do for this person to get them on their phone or
Yeah.
tablet. Like, here's how we're going to increase screen time.
And I've tried to use that now on my social media. So I have like X and Blue Sky. So I'm trying to put out different types of posts
Don't forget TikTok,
because,
John. Your TikTok presence right now, and this isn't for the show or for anything else, is amazing. I
okay.
love when I get a thing from TikTok and it says Professor John post. I'm like, I have to see what this is. Your TikTok presence is phenomenal right now. It's so good,
Well, thank
so
you.
good.
Thank you for that. That you just took my whole point away from me now. I
Oh
can't
no, I'm
even finish.
sorry.
I don't even want to finish now what I was saying. No,
Sorry.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, because you said that I'm doing good on TikTok, but I'll mention that in a second. My first one was X and Blue Sky. I tried different posts to see which one gets the most attention. And then they all are kind of getting the same. And I look up and I have 3 followers. So that's hard. You need, I think, more than that. But now you're saying TikTok. I do have more followers on TikTok.
I bet you,
I
and
do.
you, hopefully anyone listening to this show, if you haven't gone and check out John's TikTok, it is so engaging, so
I,
much fun.
I'd heard, some negative things about TikTok, and it's just a bunch of kids dancing and this and that. And I got on, I was told I should get on it and look around, and I did. And there's a lot of cool stuff on TikTok. There's a lot of people training. There's a lot of brain scientists on there. So I
Yeah,
thought I would do a little bit of a different twist. And so, yeah, I'm trying TikTok, and it's kind of fun. I
I love
tried
it.
podcasting. I thought I would never do that. And that's kind of fun.
I know. I'm remembering the first time I brought it up and the visceral reaction
Yeah, I
from
did not
you.
want to do
And
this.
now
I
look
did
at
not.
us. Look
I'm
at this.
enjoying it. I'm looking forward to it each week.
I hope so.
I
I
really
hope that
am.
you enjoy this
And
because I am loving this.
yeah, and I think we're growing because you said earlier we have 19 followers now, and I mean we're up like what 6 or 7, so that's
Yeah,
good.
we're. I
Just a
mean,
slow growth.
it's a
Slow,
slow.
steady growth is better, right?
Yes, that's right. We have this huge popularity and then it goes away in a month. I'd rather build a
Yeah,
nice strong listener base of people who listen as often as they can and enjoy
absolutely.
what you have to say. And because I do, I learned yet again so much from you this week, and I appreciate it so much.
I'm learning
Uh,
from you too. I really am. I learned a lot, and it's exciting. We've done almost 24 hours of this now. We're coming up on
yeah,
like close to 24 hours, so like a whole
that's
day's
right.
worth of information, and that shows micro learning, the effect of it. Because if you sat in a university classroom for 24 hours and walked away, you wouldn't know as much as if even if I give the same information as you've listened to this for 24 hours, you probably know a lot more about the brain than just sitting in a university classroom for 24 hours.
It may not qualify as micro training, but 1 hour a week for 24 weeks, I think you're going to get a lot more out of it. So,
yeah.
But in all sincerity, for the podcast, for 24 episodes, but also for today, thank you for your time. I kept you way longer than I meant to. We're at 113 already.
Oh my goodness. That went fast.
It's okay. Yeah, it did.
Well, just keep flexing those neurons.
Oh, I'm going to try. And again, thank you. And for everybody out there, I know I just spent some time bashing social media, but we are the podcast has a TikTok as well, but John's TikTok, we are on X, we are on Blue Sky. I try to release clips from shows on YouTube as well. And so this show is wherever you're listening to it. It's one of 4 things for right now, but Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and on any one of those platforms, whichever one it is, if you can follow, subscribe to the show, that just helps us keep this going. We're having fun doing this and learning a lot. I hope that you are too, but we need you all to keep this going. So if you like the show, try and let us know. If you love the show, let somebody else know. And let's try to get that listener base up. I just, for anybody who is listening, I thank you for hanging out with us. And I hope that you're getting out of this even a fraction of what I'm getting. So until next week, thank you.